Hello, I'm Caroline Marshall, and welcome to Bump to Business Owner, the podcast speaking to mums in business, you. I'll be in conversation with some of the most inspiring women and mothers in enterprise about their journey, how they created their successful businesses alongside raising their children, and what that looks like in work and family life. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Bump to Business Owner. I'm your host, Caroline Marshall, and today I'm joined by the incredible Lauren Currie OBE, someone I've long admired for the way she shows up, speaks up, and lifts others as she goes. Lauren is the founder of Upfront, an organisation on a mission to change confidence, visibility and power for 10 million women. Thousands of women from over 50 countries have now graduated from Upfront's flagship programme, The Bond, and it's become the go-to for women and organisations who want to grow confidence from the inside out. Their clients include global names like Nike, Just Eat Takeaway, the Ministry of Defence, the British Red Cross and Pleo, a true sign of the movement Lauren has built. Lauren is a sought-after keynote speaker. Her goal to help everyone in the room turn their own lights on, and she is not afraid to use her voice where it matters most. She was chair of the brilliant campaign group Pregnant Then Screwed for 7 years, championing women against maternity discrimination. Her work has been recognised globally, from being awarded an OBE for services to design and diversity, to being named one of ELLE's Women Changing the World and one of Management Today's top businesswomen under 35. Originally from Scotland, Lauren now lives in Uppsala in Sweden with her partner and their 7-year-old son, juggling motherhood, business and a mission that only gets louder. Welcome, Lauren. Oh my goodness, what a CV. You've achieved so much and you're yet to turn 40 yet, so I'm so excited to discuss your whole journey and everything. And I actually found out one of a girl who started working with me, providing me operational support, did your programme, and she was so excited. Yeah! She was so excited to know we were chatting. And I was like, oh, give me any questions you've got then.
I'm sure she'll be amazing. And yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your podcast. I'm super happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. And so, Lauren, for anyone who doesn't know you, I love, talking about women and mums, your path. And you've had a really interesting one going into design and now founder. So tell us a bit about your career that led to your path, because Upfront is actually your 6th business as well. So let's speak about that.
Of course, I'd love to. So my journey started, as you say, in design. I think I was really lucky that I discovered this thing that made me super excited and put a fire in my belly when I was very young at school. I went along to art school on a mission to be, the next Steve Jobs that would...
Wow, so you really had goals there.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm going to build a product that will make me really rich and change the world. And then at university, I was introduced to a very kind of emerging new discipline called service design, which was, taking all the same principles and ideas and methodologies that you use to build physical products and applying them to services. And that was a really exciting moment for me when I realised every single thing around us, all the services we use, from buying a cup of coffee to going on holiday to going to the cinema to booking a GP appointment, finding out when your recycling gets collected, all these things are designed, and there is a process for doing that so that these services work for many, many different people with many, many different needs. And at the time, service design wasn't something you could study, it wasn't something you could buy a book about and learn, and so I decided to teach myself by making friends with the people who were kind of leaders in that field, in the industry. And when I graduated, I decided to set up my own business, which was never the intention. My intention was always the kind of classic, I'll move to London and get a job. But the closer I got to that just didn't feel right. And I really wanted to use my creativity to make Scotland better and to help Scottish communities. And I met another woman who shared very similar passions to me, and we ended up joining forces and building my first business, which was a service design consultancy, very focused on the public sector. So that was my first business, Snook, and we were all about using design and creativity to make Scotland better. And I built that from scratch up to kind of 30-person consultancy, and did that for, the best part of 10 years. And then things changed, my life changed, and I decided, this business that I thought I was going to run till I was 80 wasn't wasn't actually going to be that way. So I then moved to Manchester and spent a year designing one of the world's first master's programs in service design. And that was my first job, and it was really fun to teach and be surrounded by experts from a field that I'd spent so long kind of studying and being immersed in. Then I moved to London for my second job, so I've been employed twice in my life. This was my second job, and this is when I went on maternity leave, because I had that thing of like, oh, if I want to have a baby, I need a job, because, you know, I wasn't as smart as I am now then, and I had a lot of fear around kind of being an entrepreneur and having babies at the same time. And
I
so
think that's a completely
worked
valid fear to have, and I think people still go through that. So
for sure, and I
yeah,
know we're going to talk about that a bit later on.
yeah.
And my work at Good Lab was all about designing businesses for the charity sector. And then I started up the London arm of an American consultancy called Nobel, and that was all about organisational design. So it's like started with products, then moved to services. And then I was like, okay, we design these brilliant services and they very rarely get implemented because organisations are chaotic. So what happens when you apply design principles to organisations and you help teams design the way they work with the same intention, the way that they design their products? So Nobel was all about that, and we worked much more with private sector organisations and big FTSE 100 companies to help them really design their culture and their ways of working. And then I spent some time building an app. So I joined a team and we raised some money to build an app to democratise leadership development. So I did that for a year or two, and that was brilliant to get my hands dirty with building an actual product that could scale. But kind of halfway through that journey, Upfront emerged as my favourite side project.
So you did a side hustle there.
It was my side hustle for 6 years before I went full time 4 years ago. And Upfront emerged because I was complaining all the time about being the only woman on conference stages and panels and boardrooms, and I decided to do something about it. So yeah, then 4 years ago went full time at Upfront, and now this is my sole focus. I have no other business. This was a big decision for me to close other things, to step down from my trustee position and to really give this my all. And now we are tiny but mighty team of 5. We have upskilled over 11,000 women from 24 time zones, and changing the world one bond at a time.
I love that. That's incredible. And I love, because something I wanted to ask you, because I heard you say this on a podcast, was that, and what I love is like taking this piece and going and seeing your journey that you've gone to make a change about it, is that you felt you were naive about how work and careers weren't set up to support women. And I agree with you. I was also that, because if you've had quite a privileged education, which a lot of us do in this country, it's a bit like, and now in the education system they say girls do better than boys, so it's quite, in the career space you feel like, oh, I can go do whatever I want because all those women fought so hard for me, and I can be a lawyer, I can work in finance, and I've got the same opportunities. So how did it feel, and what was it that made you realise that it's not the same in the workplace, or at least at a certain point, say maternity is what we're discovering now? Was it the fact you were the only women in all these and you're working with FTSE 100s that are quite male dominated? Yeah,
there was definitely a light bulb moment, and it happened at a conference that I was speaking at in 2016, and I always say like this is the day that Upfront was born, like the fire in my belly was lit, the spark that'll never go out. And it was a very professional, well-established event, and I was the only woman on the whole bill. And when I was standing on stage, it just felt so off. Looking back, I did a really brave thing, and I called it out from the stage. And that was a real turning point, because I was asking the question, why am I the only woman up here? I am looking at an audience full of women. I know.
I was going to say, was it quite a diverse audience? Yeah.
And it's like, why are none of you on this stage telling your story? And I put a post-it note on the mirror in the women's toilets that said, would you like to speak on stage one day? Like, tell me about it. And so my tweets were buzzing 100 miles an hour. There was queues of people waiting to speak to me. And that was when I realised, this entire space has just not been designed with women in mind. We are given such a strong message from childhood about who belongs in certain spaces, whose stories get listened to and whose stories get ignored. Like, a lot of this system is actively working against us. And I also realised that, this is absolutely not just about gender. It's like when I was listening to these people and their stories, I started to understand how layered and complex it is and how intersectional it is and how much the game is rigged even more for women of colour, for disabled women, for LGBTQ plus women, for working class women. And it's like we're all being told to run the same race, but some of us are starting 5 laps behind and then being told it's all down to merit. And so that was when, as I say, this fire was lit, and I was like, okay, I need to build something to really challenge this kind of lie of meritocracy and also give women the tools and the confidence and the community that they need to speak on stage if they wish. It wasn't about everybody has to be a TED speaker. It is about, if that opportunity ever arises or you ever want to do that, I want you to be able to say yes and be comfortable to take up that space, because confidence is not a personality trait, it's a structural issue. And back then in 2016, nobody was talking about that, and we didn't have language around intersectionality and anti-racism and the things that we do now. And as much as a lot of the things that I realised that day, of course, were devastating, it is very upsetting, but it's also very activating. And for me, that's a very consistent pattern in my work. It's those things of like, the truth will piss you off and then set you free. It's like it is upsetting, but it's also activating, because I left that space just truly centered on the idea that I'm going to build something to make this better. Like, there are no questions. Like, that's what I'm going to do, because I'm a designer and I make things and I learn and think and figure things out through making and building. And so that's what I did.
I love that. It's given me goosebumps. And it is, because you've literally just done a post again. Like, I read it yesterday and it's so true, because it even makes me stop and think about it. Like, for example, you use the example of the Bumble founder, and the story we're told is that she has a great story about where it came about and what happened at the other platform and why she built Bumble and being a female founder. Also, the other story is that she had the privilege. The co-founder is like a billionaire. She came from family money. Her husband comes from oil wealth. And the risk is, you have to take risks as a business owner. And if you come from that structural privilege, the risks are so much less than someone who doesn't have money to fall back on, or other priprivileges like family and things like that to fall back on.
Totally. It's just a totally different context. And I often notice it when people are like, oh, I went to school with so and so who's now in the Olympics, and I know a lawyer, like my friend I went to school with a lawyer. It's like, a lot of the people I went to school with are in jail.
And it's real. It's a huge element of that, and that people don't get, like, knowing someone helps huge amounts of people. And I think, I do wonder, I hope you don't mind me asking, Lauren, do you think women are more aware of this than our male counterparts? Because sometimes I do feel, when I'm in female founders group, we are so aware of this, but I still look sometimes at male founders with privilege who I know, and I'm like, they would never think about talking about their privilege.
So how I think about it is, there's always a moment of activation where you are hurt or harmed, or someone you love is hurt or harmed, or you witness hurt or harm in some way that wakes you up and shows you how the world treats people differently.
Yeah.
And I think if you are a white man, that's just less likely to happen. And for example, if you're a white woman, I know, for example, for a lot of white women, it's not until they become a mother. Becoming a mother is that moment for them. But when you talk to women of colour, like, that moment happens way earlier in their life. Or if you talk to women who are disabled, and so obviously the job of all of us is to connect with that care and empathy with as many people as possible without having to wait for that moment of activation. But I think, unfortunately, that's just how it works, right? It's like a lot of people don't have those moments, and so they're ignorant and unaware of those things.
I was that white woman and it was maternity, that was that real thing. But then trying to portray that to my friends who hadn't got to motherhood yet and they were still in that bubble where they hadn't had their eyes opened was quite fascinating for me, because I would have easily been that if I hadn't been the first one to have the baby and see the discrimination that was happening to me in the workplace, and that was then coming from my friends, because it did, like, not all of them, but half, let's say. It's so interesting. And on that point, actually, I've spoken to a lot of women who are founders now, and I love speaking to women who are founders pre-motherhood, because I think they're so much more aware, to the point too aware and scared, not yet in motherhood, and genuinely and thinking about it. They're of age, they are in a partnership, and they're proactively thinking about it, and they're genuinely so worried. So for you, I mean, actually, you weren't a founder. You clearly felt, like you just said, you felt you had to be employed when you were choosing and approaching motherhood. And do you know what that story you were telling yourself was?
Yeah, and I think it was also to do with our circumstances, in that my partner was an academic when we met, and so he decided to leave academia so we could have a baby. And so I didn't have a husband or a partner with a salary that we could rely on. And I think, you know, if I was to have a baby now, it would be very, very different. And we are, you know, we're both entrepreneurs. We both work for my company, and that would definitely feel like the right choice. But that's, you know, nearly 10 years ago. So I've learned a lot in that time. But I think the fear that you talk about is definitely something that I can feel in the women around me as well, who haven't had children yet and they're thinking about it. And I do think that fear is valid. It's like, we do live in a world that is unkind to mothers. We are operating in workplaces that were not set up for women. And then you put being an entrepreneur on top of that is one of the hardest paths that there is, but it's also the freest, right? So it can offer flexibility and financial agency in a way that traditional employment can't offer. I do really believe that one of the most important decisions that these women and that any of us will ever make is who you choose to have a baby with. I think that decision will shape the emotional and logistical landscape of your entire career. And I don't think we say that out loud enough. And I think some people will be upset at that. You know, I think it's an uncomfortable truth, but one that I do think we should talk about more.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean things are perfect, because marriages and partnerships go through that, but it is about truly understanding the challenges women have and how they can support it in your partnership, kind of thing. Like when I decided to go all in with Upsource, because I lost my job twice within the first 18 months of motherhood, my husband supported me because he got the entrepreneurial spirit. And I think so many would be like, what, just be a mum, like, why would you do that, kind of thing. Rachel from Choreo Kids, who's been on this podcast, said the same thing, but she said it's really hard to say to someone, you can't say that in retrospect, and you can't say to someone in their 20s, choose the right, it is so important. It's on an individual level, you can't say that, but building awareness of how important that is to start a family.
Yeah. So I'm glad we're saying it today, because it is important. And I think for me, it's like I started a business while I was pregnant, which was making gender neutral nursery art. So we like set up an e-commerce shop. I mean, on reflection, I'm like, mate, just go to bed. But I am what I am. So that's that. And then I joined the American agency to kind of build the London office of their company when my baby was like just flipped between 4 and 6 months. And I did feel like very unprepared for the emotional roller coaster that I was in those early days. And I was just so consumed with guilt because I wanted to work, because I felt like I was getting the easy card, getting to go to work, and my partner was stuck at home all day with this tiny baby. For enjoying my work, for the pressure for the work to work and bring us in enough money that we could pay our mortgage. I remember I flew to Berlin to give a keynote when he was 3 months old, and I remember obviously I pumping breast milk for so long before I went, to make sure he would have enough for the kind of 48 hours that I was gone. And I remember so clearly I was at the airport, not even through security yet, and my partner sent me photographs and all the packets were empty. And he drank it all and I wasn't even there yet, and I was just breaking my heart. Like, it was so upsetting for me. And all of the other women that I knew who had babies were all on maternity leave, all had jobs, they were still getting paid, and they would go back after mat leave in 12 months. And I just felt like nobody understands what this feels like. And I just felt very alone and felt torn in two between, like, I need to go big and I need to really step up and lead and make this work and make it amazing. And at the same time being like, I want to just walk away from this and stay at home and be with my baby. Didn't know any other mums that were entrepreneurs, didn't know any other mums that were the sole income earners. There was just no map. And I think if you're listening to this conversation and you're in that space and you're feeling worried or uncertain or scared, like, I need you to know that there's nothing wrong with loving your work, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to work and build and lead whilst raising a family. It's like you don't have to choose. And the societal narrative of the kind of self-sacrificing mother as a martyr is a really heavy weight to carry. I think we all need to put it down. It's like no matter what path we choose, it's going to be messy, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be imperfect, but none of us are alone. Like, we're all figuring this out in our own ways. And I think the more we can come together and support each other and be really honest about that, the better.
Wow. And Lauren, honestly, all of that you've just said, thank you, is like exactly why this podcast exists, because it would be so easy for someone to look at your success and be like, she cracked on, she did this, but you've just shared exactly all the dilemmas that the realities of in those early months. And when people say it doesn't get better, I'm always like, yeah, I think it does. Parenthood.
No, it definitely does.
Yeah, thank you. I think when you're like, because I think if you're that ilk, I mean, I didn't have to, and it was COVID anyway with my second, when I ran my business, if you're of that ilk, that you really have a mission and a purpose in your work, it's a real challenge to then not beat yourself up about it. And do you mind me asking, do you feel you missed anything on maternity leave, or have you made peace? Because I had to make peace with the fact my maternity leaves weren't just going to be like everyone else's, and that's not me. But have you made some peace with that?
It's a good question. I wouldn't say I'm 100% at peace. I have this, like, I wish I could go back in time, because if I'd known then what I know now, like, I wouldn't have said yes to the keynote in Berlin. But the version of me then was in a scarcity place of, what if I run out of money? What if I don't get another invitation? What if? And, I've done so much very hard work on myself through therapy and coaching and, my own work over the years. My son's 7 now, that I wouldn't fall into that trap now. So I do feel it feels mixed. So I don't feel guilty and I don't beat myself up about it, because I know that I did the best that I could with the knowledge that I had at the time. But I feel sad, if that makes sense. I feel sad that I pushed so hard, and also all of this in the context of having extreme PTSD, which I know we're going to go on and talk about. And so when you add that into the picture, it's like, bloody hell, like, no wonder I'm tired.
I mean, you're amazing, and that's what I just wanted to get onto, because all of this, as someone, we almost lost our second child quite dramatically after he'd been born, and so I had a whole journey with PTSD myself, so you're in safe hands. And thank you for kindly sharing that, because I think some of these things, I mean, everything you went through was very valid anyway, but with PTSD, you're in, I don't know how it represented for you, which I'd love to know, but freeze or flight or fright zone, you're in a survival zone. Even more so, I think a lot of new mums are, but in PTSD, you're really in a survival zone.
Yeah, so for me, it stemmed from two things. I had a heteroectopic pregnancy, which is very rare, like 1 in 30,000.
Wow.
Really dangerous situation where there's one embryo in your uterus and one embryo outside your uterus, and so the embryo in my fallopian tube ruptured, and there was 4 litres of blood in my abdomen. My liver and my kidneys were shutting down, and the doctors ignored me for many hours.
So was this in childbirth and they didn't know you had another embryo?
No, so I was only 8 weeks pregnant, so it was very, very early. And they ignored me, didn't believe me, and it wasn't until I started being sick all over the waiting room that they eventually pulled me in for someone to see me, and they couldn't figure it out, but said, we need to blue light you to the hospital. And the hospital took one look at me and knew what was knew there was something really wrong, and the doctors had said to my partner if she'd arrived 10 minutes later, she would be dead and the baby would be dead too. So it was very traumatic, and of course I lost one of the babies, and the embryo that survived is my son, and he's 7 and he's amazing, but the trauma from that didn't actually manifest itself until he was born, because I think I was so happy to be alive, and I was so happy that one of my babies was okay, that it didn't appear until, because I also had a very traumatic birth, which was a 3-day labour that ended up in an emergency section with midwives talking over me, talking about me in the room when I was right there, as if I wasn't there. An induction that I didn't understand and didn't give full consent to. It was just horrible. So for me, there was a lot of flashbacks, very intrusive thoughts and images, really, really bad nightmares, which meant I didn't really sleep. I mean, you don't sleep anyway when you have a newborn, but any of the moments of sleep that I could catch when he was sleeping weren't good quality sleep, and a lot of intense like physical distress. So whenever I would see or hear something that would remind me of that time, I would, shake and sweat and be sick, and there was a lot of feeling really unsafe, feeling anxious, feeling like I couldn't trust anybody, and blaming myself for all of it. And I think that's why I feel, I'm particularly vocal about the kind of manifestation, high energy bullshit, because a lot of the narrative around this stuff is like that if you just imagine and think positively, and that these things go the way you want to go. And the reality is, these things are about the size of your skeleton and the size of your baby's head, and no amount of positive thinking or breath preparation work or any of those things can change those two very factual, practical pieces of data. So yeah, I mean, it was the most difficult experience of my life, and it still feels hard to talk about, but I do want to talk about it because I think so many women go through it by themselves and feel like they just have to be grateful because, of course, a lot of people go through that trauma and their baby doesn't survive. And I know I had a huge amount of guilt of like, who am I to feel bad or be upset when my baby did survive? And I'm sure that's one that you'll
feel the same. But he's here now. That's what people say to you. But he's here now, and that's all that matters. And it's not. It's not all that matters. And thank you for sharing that. And it's so much of that, because the structural issues in healthcare, what stand out, especially when you're 8 weeks and not being listened to or being talked about in a room and not being spoken to and informed of your choices properly, and the self-blame and I think that's the structural issues of motherhood is put on us in pregnancy and birth, that you said, the positive stuff. And I think that's in life in general, not even just birth, just in life, because if you ever sit on a NICU ward with a bunch of 6 babies, you're like, none of them deserve to be here or didn't think positively enough, they're babies. And thank you. So it's just, did you think as well did you have any external narratives that people were expecting you, especially once your baby was arrived and healthy and you were physically fine and back to work, that people just thought, oh, she's fine, and didn't understand you at all?
I don't think so. I think I'm really good at asking for help, and I'm really good at, if there's something not right, I immediately jump to solution and action. And I think it became clear after a few weeks that I was just not all right. And I went to my GP and I said to him, I think I have birth trauma, and he was like, what's that?
Stop it.
He'd never heard of it. And I had to get out my phone and showed him like a birth trauma Instagram page that I'd been looking at.
7 years ago, and he hadn't heard of birth trauma.
He hadn't heard of it. And so that was obviously, I mean, it's quite unbelievable to say it out loud now, but I think in the moment I'd been so let down by all the medical people that I'd met through the journey. I was just like, whatever, like, it's this, can you help me? And to be fair, from that moment on, he referred me to the NHS. I was immediately put in touch with a PTSD birth trauma specialist, and the care I got was extraordinary. Like, this woman saved my life, and she was Canadian, and even now when I hear a Canadian accent, I get like really emotional, because it was felt like magic, the things and I guess that's also what I want to say to anybody listening, like all of these horrible symptoms, they can all go away. It's like there are methods and tools and strategies to get them to all go away, and to get you to a place where you understand that you're not weak and you're not a failure, and it's not your body's fault and it's not your brain's fault, that your body and your brain's just responding to the trauma in the only way that it knows how. I mean, it was obviously that work is very difficult, and I'm sure you've had your own journey of going through that as well, and it's very confronting and emotional, and doing all that whilst having a tiny baby is even harder.
When it brings up stuff from your past as well, which some people need, because I think when you've gone through a trauma, it brings up things that weren't okay as well. And I think that's when it comes to the point you're fixing yourself or mothering yourself while doing it with a tiny baby. And it showed you being able to speak about it right now is incredible, Lauren. So thank you. And I'm so pleased to hear you get help, and it's so important. And that's why it's important to share as well, because I think people start to think like I did. I got help after 2 years, and I think, but then I read that it can be like 4 years for a woman. I got told it was 12 weeks for trauma to manifest, and I think that was such a tick box exercise, especially when I had 2 at the time to look after in a business, so it was just not on the priority list to like think about it. And I think there's that awareness as well. Everyone's on a different timeline for recovery and all of that. Unfortunately, the NHS has a timeline, but otherwise recovery doesn't have a timeline. And I'm so pleased, while you hadn't heard of it, that you got that. So no, thank you so much. And has it shaped more who you are now and how you approach things, do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's part of who I am, and it's part of my story. And I can see that my loneliness and lack of belonging, and that is something that has fueled me to create a business that provides community and belonging for lots of other people. I really wish I could have my own bond, because it really is exactly what I needed at that time. And there was a time, and that time will come for you if you're listening, where you will wake up one day and be like, oh, I'm not waking up in a panic anymore, and you had a lovely deep sleep that felt restful. But I think the thing for me is like the difference between healing and grief. My PTSD symptoms were 95% gone, and that felt like, okay, we're in a good place now, and I stopped working with the therapist there. But the grief for the baby that I lost, the birth that I thought I would have, the postpartum time that I'd imagined and kind of dreamed of, I would say actually it's only been last year and this year that I've started to work with the grief of the baby that I lost. Like, even me saying that to you right now, it's like 2 years ago I wouldn't have said that, because I'm like, oh, it was really early, it was really small, like it doesn't count, doesn't matter, like all these stories that you tell yourself. So I've been really trying to sit with, I did lose a baby, and I want to like learn everything that has to teach me. And sometimes that creeps up for me in really unexpected moments, and I don't think it's ever something that you like get over, but it's something that you kind of learn to carry. And I'm kind of in the place now where I'm healing from that, and like understanding that the cloud of PTSD is lifted, but there's definitely still shadows of grief, and that's okay, and that's the path that I'm on.
I love that. And it's true, and because you have to grieve, and that's what I've learned as well, is if you can't feel the grief and accept the grief, as in let yourself be in the grief, you're never going to also feel the real joys in life either. Because it's like grief and trauma and everything is such a joy stealer, and it's so important, because you, like I said, you're always going to carry it, but you will get joyful moments, but you can't feel them if you can't, because you've got to feel all the emotions. And I really believe in that. Then you don't feel the amazing ones if you don't really have to learn to feel and accept your grief.
And I think part of it for me has been realising that even though my son is 7 and so happy and so healthy, that I'm still showing up in a what if he wasn't here? What if he didn't make it And that's really hard.
I have the same with my 5-year-old, but mixed then with a sudden moment of like, I can't believe I get to have him.
Yeah.
And it's like, I do say at most days I still have, I can't believe I got to keep him. Yeah, it is that. But then also like, it's a little, you got to recognise, those intrusive thoughts and moments I think come worse if you've seen the other side, don't you? Thank you. That's, brilliant. And 7 and healthy and wonderful, but it's so important to remember to feel that grief. And I love sharing that you're 7 years in, because I think, I don't know if you did, but I think just being a really like woman who gets on with things and does things and makes moves, you're easily like, well, I've moved on from that.
Yeah, it was a really long time ago.
Yeah, or give yourself a timeline to move on. I used to do that with anything like heartbreak, job losses, things like that. I'd be like, right, I've got a week or something like that. And then I've got a week to feel sorry for myself, and that's it. And that, that lends itself in some ways, but in other ways, when it's the big things in life, they don't have a timeline.
For sure. No timeline.
No timeline. And then we can still say it when they're 17 and 15. Wow. I can't believe he's here. So, and I'd love to talk about, so you moved out of the UK, and they're really popular when we chat about this, because I think a lot of people think about moving out of the UK. We've had a lady move to France and it didn't work out, but she moved to Spain and it worked out amazingly. So what made you move to Sweden, that's right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what did that look like in practice?
So we chose Sweden for a combination of kind of personal, political, practical reasons. Like both my partner and I had ties to Sweden, him more so because he'd lived and studied in Uppsala, where we live now. He did his master's here before we met, and I'd been a visiting lecturer at one of the universities here for a few years before we met, so I'd had some trips back and forth to Stockholm. And so we'd always had this kind of quiet curiosity between us of like what life could be like there. Maybe that's in our map one day. And then it was in 2019 when the Conservative Party won the election, we decided we were no longer comfortable and happy to stay in London. Our son was 2, and we just felt really strongly that the UK was going in a direction that we didn't feel good about for imagining the future for our son. There was definitely, we had Brexit, kind of rising anti-immigration narrative, the kind of rising right-wing rhetoric, which obviously if we look at the last 5 years, what we predicted has come true and much worse. So we first considered going to Scotland to be closer to my family, but then a work opportunity came up in Stockholm that was kind of the nudge we needed to choose Stockholm, and so we decided to go for it. I had a few contacts here that helped me find an apartment, and so we had our apartment and our plans were all made, and then COVID came, so we were like, will we even ever get on an airplane again? Like, it was very who knows,
we stuck here.
Yeah, it was, borders were closing, rules were changing every day. We were in this really strange limbo of like, should we stay, should we wait, should we try and go, will it ever happen? And looking back, I'm like, what a wild thing to do in a global pandemic with a 2-year-old. Like, I actually cannot quite process that we did that, but we did it, and we literally rolled under the gate in October 2020, days before the Swedish government changed the immigration rules in response to Brexit. And we had no idea how close we were to like missing the window, but looking back, it feels like just such luck, sheer luck, that we made it here in time. It definitely wasn't an easy move. Like, I think uprooting your toddler during a pandemic and navigating Swedish bureaucracy, which is very bureaucratic, very process heavy and very unfriendly to outsiders, was just a huge amount of emotional labour. But we're definitely really happy we made the move, and we're proud of ourselves for making the move. We're not going to stay here forever. That we love, but we have found Swedish culture really, really challenging. Yeah, we are planning our next move, not quite sure yet.
Yeah, you're not sure? Can you share? Have you thought of anywhere on the list?
I think it will be Scotland, and I don't, we both don't really buy into the kind of forever home, like this is where we'll be forever. I think we'll move around a lot, but the idea of setting up again in another unfamiliar place just feels too difficult. We've been here for nearly 5 years now, and I'm just really craving familiarity and comfort and a culture that I understand and belong to and feel appreciated and supported by. I think Swedish culture is very insular, and our experience of it has been this very unfriendly and unwelcoming. And yeah, I'm just craving the kind of warmth and banter, and anybody's welcome to come in for a cup of tea that we have in Scotland, because Sweden's the opposite of that, and it's been hard for me.
I'm sorry, and so thank you for raising awareness of that, because I it's so important, and that's what they did, like with this lady who moved to France. It was a similar way of like having a dream and then being like, I'm proud we've done it, but it isn't quite what we need. And it's such an interesting part to explore, so thank you. And I'm going to see what question comes in. Something I loved on your form that you said, and I agree with this so much, but it was like one of those, you know, sometimes we have a little form we fill out for this podcast, and so sometimes people say something, you're like, yeah, it is. And you said building a business whilst raising a family is radical. I'd love to explore this. So where does that come from, and what made you like think of this? Because I think it is. I actually used the word radical the other day, inspired by it, because I was like, it is, isn't it? And so what makes you think it come from this place of that I'm doing this radical thing, being a mother, building a business?
So I think it is radical, and we don't talk about it enough. And I think it's radical because building something from nothing is always extraordinary to me. I think it takes so much vision, emotional labour, so much risk, and I'm in awe of anybody that chooses that path, who says, I have this idea, now I want to make it real. That's just I cannot get enough of that energy.
Is that your design background as well?
Yes,
of idea to creation.
Just make it. And when you add parenting into the mix, it's so now you're growing humans as well as a business. It's that's full body, full heart rebellion against every single thing a woman has been told about her role and what's possible. And one of the reasons I think it's so radical is because it's so new, right? It's it was only 1975 that women could open a bank account in their own name. 75. That is within living memory for many people. And it wasn't until 1990 that women could retire at the same age as men. So this is not 100 years ago. This is my mum and your mum. Was not that long ago. So we've gone from being denied financial autonomy to building companies, hiring teams, raising capital, all whilst raising children in a very short space of time. And that it's progress, but it also feels revolutionary. It's we're role modelling what's possible, and we're rebelling against the norms that have told us constantly to wait. It's you have to wait for permission. You have to wait till your children are growing. You have to wait till you've got this much money in your bank account. Wait for the right time. Wait for approval. It's we're not waiting anymore. We're saying, I'm going to do it anyway. And the other piece of it is culturally, women are always taught to please other people and to follow rules. So when you stand up and say, well, I'm going to build this, I'm going to make my own money, I'm going to create art,
my rules,
create impact, my rules, I'm fucking yes. That just feels so extraordinary to me. Absolutely, it's entrepreneurship, but it's also agency. It's changing the story of, it's building a new story, and our children are watching us do that. And that's what I think is also the radical part. Our children are watching us do it. And absolutely, it's very hard. Let's not romanticize it or beat about the bush. It's absolutely exhausting, certainly for me.
And I feel that's important to share. Yeah. Because I feel women who were high-powered career women when we were growing up weren't allowed to say that and didn't feel empowered to say how hard it is. And so that's part of what we were sold we could do it as well. Yeah. And I do think my parents look at me and are oh, you're why are you talking about this? And I'm because I don't want people just to think I just snapped my fingers, started a business, and this is what happens. It's hard, and we should talk about it. And working is hard. I've got friends who are midwives, and what they have to juggle with the changing early years is insane. I actually think it's easier being a business owner at this stage. But I was and seeing them trying to navigate the system and everything the work system with parenting. And I think it's important to bring out how hard it is, because change doesn't happen if we all just crack on with it and say this is easy.
And that's totally, and it's why it feels so uncomfortable at times, I think, is because it is so new. It's like we don't have hundreds of years of data and case studies and stories and peers and elders. Like, this is a very new thing, and that makes it radical and very hard and very amazing.
And anyone, because I did a little pop quiz with my husband recently, and he got the answers wrong of when we could open bank accounts and things. So I think that's a really good way of spreading awareness, everyone, is like, test the men in your life about when these dates were that we could open bank accounts. And I've even told my oldest, I don't think he understands it yet, but I'm really trying to already show him that, you know, I couldn't have done this 20 years ago, and that's not that long ago. For him, that is a long time ago, but it's not. Yeah. And where does I think, to finish on brand for you and your business, where does your confidence come from? Where do you feel that you feel comfortable when you were the only woman in the room, standing on stage, delivering keynotes? And how can other women learn from that, other than obviously, of course, going to Upfront and becoming part of your bonds?
Yeah, of course. Would love to welcome you. I mean, I think my confidence is a journey that I'll be on forever, right? It's like, it's not, you don't ever get a gold star in confidence. You can't graduate confidence. There's just levels of
Complete.
it. Yeah, exactly. And my confidence, I think, comes from trying. You know, I am definitely not afraid to be seen trying, and I am a doer. Like, I take action and try stuff. And so my confidence has been built, and it's not coming from a place of always feeling certain or fearless, but it's coming from a place of, I do the thing despite the fear or despite the doubt, and, you know, from continually taking risks and realizing I can do hard things. It's like, from learning that a rejection isn't the end of the world, learning that awkwardness isn't fatal, that messing up doesn't make you unworthy. Like, it's, for me, a lot of it is learning to trust myself, and I think that's really relevant, especially in the early days of motherhood, when everything feels really new and fragile, and the world loves to swoop in with opinions and rules and judgments. You're too ambitious, you're not ambitious enough, you're too attached, you're not present enough. I mean, it's like,
you're not feeding them enough, you're not doing this enough. It's, again, it's the not enoughness, isn't it? I guess, is that.
Yeah, of course.
Any of it.
And so I think if anybody's in that transition and you're trying to find your confidence, it's like, you need to turn down the volume of the outside world and turn up the volume of your inside world, because it's not about having all the answers. It's about just staying with yourself when the answers aren't there, and to honour what you know to be true. It's like, who are your people? What helps you feel most like yourself? What would you do right now that would make your younger self proud? It's like building the foundations where your confidence can ebb and flow, because you'll have peaks and troughs, and it'll ebb and flow. And some days, I think, especially when you're a new mum, I have so many new mums say to me, I'm never going to get my confidence back. You can always, always, always get it back. I promise, promise, promise. You can get it back. You will get it back. There is a confident version of you in the future that will blow your mind when you meet her.
I love that, and I think that's so true. And more new mums need to be told this, because I think there's still this narrative of the end or the lifeline, and that's it forever if you're not feeling good once you have a baby. And it's not true. It makes me so sad. But thank you. And like, what's one bold action if there's someone listening and they're feeling stuck between motherhood and business? What's one thing if they feel they've got something in them to start? What action could they take today?
Honour the season that you're in. I honestly think that is the boldest thing you can do, because we live in a culture that glorifies constant doing, constant momentum, constant output, and that's going to make you feel like you're falling behind if you're not doing all the things all the time. And the truth is, it's really, really difficult to feel confident when you're sleep deprived, when you're hungry, when you're traumatized, when you're emotional. Like, so if you're in a space of these things, teething, big feelings, logistics, chaos, it's like, stop trying to build a business as if you're not also holding on to all of that stuff. It's like, boldness isn't always launching the new fancy thing. Sometimes it's going to bed and saying, this is really hard right now, this can wait. And if you're finding it hard, it's because it's hard. It's not because you're doing it wrong. It's not because you're not cut out for business. It's not because you're not cut out for motherhood. It's because we live in a system that was never ever designed to support women at all. Never mind women who also want to build a business whilst they're raising their babies. So my plea to you is like, don't internalize that brokenness and don't let it live in your heart, because it'll tell you that you're the problem and there is nothing wrong with you. It's like you are doing more than enough, and the spark and the itch and the idea and the ambition will all be there. Like, it's not going anywhere. And I still struggle with this. It's like trusting that the ideas and the energy and the creativity is not going anywhere. Like, this is a lifelong partnership with yourself. You have 60 more years of ideas and creativity. Like, it is a lifetime relationship that you're building with your own ambition and your confidence. So like, trust that and honour the season that you're in.
I love that. On a smaller scale, I've started honouring when I'm just having PMT and I'm like, I need to go to bed and not work so hard, and just honouring that on a much smaller scale. Now I'm not in that baby season. It's so true. Thank you. I love to talk about joy on every podcast, and because I mentioned it earlier, I believe in women. I feel it's radical for women to have joy outside their kids, outside their work, and just something for them that they know, oh my God, that gives me so much joy. For me, it might be going to the theatre or a dance class or a hula hoop. Someone did skipping in the garden recently, and especially with feeling your grief and feeling everything like that, has there been anything that's really brought you pure joy recently, or that you've discovered on your journey?
Yeah, so I love this question, and I agree that joy is so important. And that we like joyfulness is part of resistance, right? It's like, for me, I think about joy just now as it's like those small moments that you can almost collect and like wear around your neck as a necklace. And right now, the huge source of joy for me is my puppy with his big like bear paws and his zoomies, and he's just absolutely the most precious, cute, adorable thing in the world. Me and my son had an ice cream, sat in the sunshine in the middle of the day for no reason at all this week. Super nice. I often have naps during the day if my schedule allows. On the days where I don't have calls, love to have a nap. And I love Maltesers. I eat Maltesers a lot. Watching my favourite show, which is Portrait Artist of the Year. That's my favourite thing, to watch artists and eat Maltesers.
Oh, that's joy.
These are just all really small. They're
perfect.
Small.
Yeah.
But I think, joy doesn't have to be big and grand. It just has to be yours.
Exactly. And I love that. I'm going to steal so many of those. But Maltesers now I've got a craving for. It's Easter, so a Malteser bunny, which are particularly epic. Right, and Lauren, I'd love to share what's next, because I also know with your what's next, you have a book coming out later in the year called, is it Taylor Meets the Trick? So tell us a bit about that, and then we can go on to where people can find out more about that and about you.
I'd love to. So Taylor Meets the Trick is a children's book for children aged 3 to 8, and it is a book to teach young children and the grown-ups around them all about the patriarchy. So
love it. Can you pre-order? Because it's perfect for my family right now.
You can't pre-order, but you can follow me on Instagram, sign up to my newsletter. We're launching it in September. We'll be having launch events online and in person, and would love your support and help. Of course, would love you to buy copies for your family and friends and the teachers that you know. All of the children who have been reading it and giving us feedback have all taken it into school, because they want everybody in the school to know what the trick is, because once you know what the trick is, it tricks you less. And the story is inspired by my son, who has long blonde curly hair nearly down to his waist now, and so constantly gets mistaken for a girl. So it's revealing the silly rules that we make up, that there are different rules for boys and girls, and of course there are no rules for any of us, and that's what the patriarchy is. So yeah, I'm really excited about it and can't wait for it to be out in the world.
Thank you, and we will share it with our community when it's out, so please do I'll be watching and sharing it away, so thank you so much, Lauren. And what's your Instagram for people to follow you, and your LinkedIn as well?
Yes, so I write on LinkedIn and Instagram every day about leadership, confidence, entrepreneurship, a lot of the themes that Caroline and I have talked about today, so would love you to follow me, say hi, tell me what you thought of this conversation, bring me any questions, reflections, insights. I love nothing more than connecting with the women who engage with my story and my work, and I always want to meet you. So yeah, you can find me at Lauren Currie at Upfront Global, and we also have a free newsletter, so you can sign up to that too.
Thank you so much for sharing today. I know some of what you shared is not easy for you, and I really appreciate your generosity, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Bump to Business Owner. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please do rate, review, follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. It really helps us to connect with more mums and business owners. You can DM me on @BumpToBusinessOwner on Instagram, and I'll be back next week.